But yeah, we've got to bring it home in one piece.
Confirmation of the special vehicle category results after Friday's qualifying and the first of the racing loops on Saturday. Clint Gibson had a commanding lead, whilst Nico Durant was the second special vehicle on the board and the first of the side-by-sides in Class G. That was most of the action from Loop 1 of the Mpumalanga 400 here in Dahlstrom. A number of questions were still waiting answers. How would the production cars reach the end of Loop 1? And who would continue to win the race? Join us after the break. Welcome back to a very wet and cold Dahlstrom, host to the first battle of 7 that will make up the 2020 South African Cross-Country Racing Series. We're nearing the end of the first of 2 racing loops that make up the race, and although the weather was cold, the action on the route was steaming hot. We know what the standings were after around 200 kilometers of racing, with Toyota Gazoo Racing SA's Henk Laterkan and Brett Cummings extending their advantage at the front of the field. But how would they all reach the halfway marker at the DSP? The battle for top Class T honours was between the Total Exilium Hilux of Gary Berthold and Siegfried Rousseau and the Malalan Toyota Hilux of the Horn brothers, Johan and Werner. In fact, the big fight never really materialised, as the Horns simply managed to keep their noses clean and hang on to the lead over their rivals after the qualifying race. Berthold was pushing hard as always and did manage to close the gap a little, but the Horns went into the rest break with an advantage of 35 seconds.
I hope to have a clean run next round, and not make mistakes and no punches.
Hey, it's going to be on for young and old, and here we go, we're going to give it a full go.
The faster of the Class T cars were right in the mix with the International Spect Class FIA cars, but let's count them down in reverse order. The Renault of Johan and Sean van Staden was forced to stop after obtaining some suspension damage, whilst former special vehicle champions Marius and Yelinda Ferrari were the last of the FIA cars to reach the DSP, but just more than 1 minute slower than another husband and wife team, that of Ramon and Maret Besadenhout, who were 10th in their CR5. A few minutes ahead of them were the 2 King Price Extreme vehicles. Namibian former rally driver Thilo Himmel was making his cross-country debut, with the experienced Gerard Skitter reading the notes, and they were pipped to the halfway mark line by teammates Clint Weston and Gerard Snyman. As always, Weston had lots to say.
That was seriously testing. That was rocks, that was trees, stumps, dams, fences, bigger rocks.
We were nearing the sharp end of the field, and this is where you would find the Toyota Gazoo Racing Hilux of Shamir Variawa and Dennis Murphy. Variawa was still too cautious though, and could only manage 7th at this stage of the race. There was less than a minute separating Variawa from the next car up the road, the Century Racing CR6, expertly driven by Brian Baragwanath and John Moore, who probably couldn't wait to show what their car could do in the dry and open conditions. So into the top 5 we went, and the men in 5th most definitely didn't want to be there. Chris Visser and Donnie Stassen started the race from 3rd, but the Total Exilium Toyota Hilux had the wrong tyres on for the wet, forcing the former champion to drop down the order. This opened the door for a very fast and consistent Ernst Roberts and Henry Kerner to move on up into 4th overall in their Redline Motorsport Miss Navarra. And this left us with the 3. The Toyota Gazoo Racing SA Hilux Buckies of Henk Laterkan and Janelle de Villiers, and the Castrol Ford Racing Ranger of Lance Woolridge. Woolridge started 3rd, but near the end of the loop, the Ford driver managed to reel in and overtake the Hilux of Dakar legend de Villiers. The difference between the two after nearly 300 kilometers of racing, just 5 seconds in favour of the Ford. All of this, however, only meant one thing, and that was that Laterkan and Cummings were controlling the race beautifully out front. The champion started in pole position, and by the end of the loop managed to increase an advantage all 6 minutes. So this is what the production car scoreboards revealed at the halfway mark. The Horns had a bit of a gap over Berthold, with the Fords of Prinsloo and Koch in hot pursuit. And it's Laterkan's name who appears at the very top of the FIA leaderboard, 6 full minutes ahead of Woolridge, who in turn only had a slender 5-second advantage over de Villiers. Back in the service park, the top contenders had a little time to reflect on the race, while the technicians worked hard to get the cars ready for Loop 2. Here's Visser and his story.
We made a wrong choice this morning, and the whole lap was overcautious, and we got a flat tire. So yeah,
There were good reasons for the time lost inside the De Villiers Hilux.
Yeah, unfortunately we had the front brake disc exploded and we had no brakes for the last 20 k's.
Woolridge, on the other hand, was happy with his progress.
We had a really good lap. Alvin didn't make a single mistake. Yeah, it's just been perfect.
And despite the tough conditions, Lottegan managed to open up a comfortable lead.
Oh, glad we made it through clean and didn't get out the car, so we'll have to try and do the same thing for the second loop.
Just one loop of exactly 157 kilometres remained to determine who all the winners were going to be in the first battle of the 2020 South African Cross Country Series. It was midday here in Dahlstrom, but neither the mist nor the rain had lifted an inch, and conditions for Loop 2 would be treacherous. This is the story of the ones who did survive the battle of the Mpumalanga 400.